is November 1st, Sunday. Wanted to put out a couple of videos this morning. Seems like it's kind of quiet here at the 342 West compound, and had a few minutes to reflect. You had an earlier, video was put out, in my frame of mind there about the preservation industry. But I wanted to switch gears. A lot of my personal friends, a lot of my people who know me from the internet, they know that I'm a man of many cultures. I traveled a lot extensively when I was younger, and I really enjoyed history and reading about things. And so I wanted to take a brief moment and talk about a taboo subject, religion. We live in America, in my mind, which is the greatest country in the world, and we have religious freedoms. We have, some things that other countries will never have, and I just pray for them and feel sorry for them that we don't have, or they don't have the freedoms and the luxuries that we have over here that we seem to take for granted. And as a child growing up, I was raised in the I guess you would call it the Christian faith. My family's background was a little bit mixed. There was some Lutheran, Methodist, Episcopalian. I actually went to a parochial school. I guess I went to a Catholic faith school for 8 or so years, and actually had difficulty learning how to read and write when I was a young kid. So I had Catholic nuns come and tutor me. We lived kind of a life of privilege, so it wasn't unusual for my parents to do what needed to be done to ensure that I had success in school. So some Catholic nuns, sisters, spent some time working with me to bring me up to speed. And then I went for 8 or 9 years into the parochial school system. And as a kid, I was fascinated by the Stations of the Cross, the Catholic faith. Looking at it from an outsider looking in. They didn't force me to participate. I didn't have to. So, I grew up thinking that, Islamic faith, Buddhist, everybody else was creepy and weird. And, I was definitely an American, child. And, something happened in my lives, which was the first Gulf War. And, a lot of us were thrust into an area, into a different part of the world that we had no answer for. I remember at the time they were saying that it wasn't, a holy crusade, but as me as a child, I was fascinated by the stories of the Knights Templars, and going off into the barbaric Middle East and fighting and this and that, and I gotta tell you, man, it was quite a journey for me. It was a soul searching. It was a time of wonderment in my part. We had to do some things that I am forever haunted by. If you've ever had to, unfortunately, take a life, you know that feeling that, it tears at your soul. It's not like the video games. It's not like the movies. If you're a veteran, fellow veteran, if you're a police officer, you know what I'm talking about. You can act like it doesn't faze you, but, ask my family. I have an awful lot of rough nights. It seems to me that the visions always come back to me when I'm sleeping and trying to relax. But I want to tell you that when I was in the Middle East, I found myself going to a mosque and talking to imams and asking them for forgiveness, because I found out that what I thought was my enemy was actually, in fact, my brother. I came to the realization that we all come from the same tribes, wherever you want to believe it or not. And I think as Americans, or as people in general, us against them, Muslim, non-Muslim, Islamophobia, this, that. It's kind of like in America we have the black versus white thing and this and that. And if you're red and you're pink, or you're gay, or you're straight, or you're freaking married or non-married, enough, man. We're all God's children. We're all good people. I don't care if you're gay, you're straight, you're half, you're swinging, you're married, you're man, like I always said, do your thing, man. Do your thing. But what I found out was that as I studied things, I started looking at the Holy Quran. I started examining the Jewish faith, and I started looking at the books of Moses and looking at the Holy Torah, and I got found my way gravitating towards Afghanistan and India and Nepal and Tibet and looking at Buddhism and some interesting things. All these religions were from different time periods, but they all have some common thread stories. One of let's talk about the Muslim religion. I remember that in the 5 pillars of Islam that they taught us, La ilaha illa Allah, Muhammad Rasul Allah, all this things that, there was a great prophet that was born out and Allah had blessed him and he did these things. And I don't have any disbelief to that. I believe in a fantastic night journey. He went, and traveled all over and visited Mecca and Medina. And, hey man, that's cool. If you want to believe that Elijah got in a fiery chariot and rode all around and Enoch walked off the side of a mountain with Jesus, or God, you kind of got to believe another religion story too. It's like the Mormons. They believe that Joseph Smith, found this or did this. I'm not a disbeliever. I'm cool with it. But in studying the religion of Islam, the biggest thing that the Americans have a difficult time is out of everybody's mouth, is without really kind of looking at it, is that the Prophet Muhammad, was a what do they call it, a pervert, because he married this Alicia, who was, I don't know, historians have problems with her date of age. I see 2 stories. I fear one that she was engaged at 7, married at 9. And then I also believe that they say that, maybe her age was misquoted, that she was like somewhere around 19. Because I think that there was the whole story originated from what an elderly scholar at Hisham, or his name, that he might have, his age and his mental capacity might have been a little less, and he might have misquoted the names, numbers. But, they always fire back that, Mary, supposedly Mary, the mother of Jesus, was only 12 or 14 when she had Jesus. I don't know, man. We're going on something that happened so many years ago. Who's to say what's what? Instead of picking apart things, I think we need to look at the beauty of it, and whether you choose to accept it or not is cool. I like Jesus. I love God. I'm Jesus, my bestie. He's my BFF. I don't really read the Bible. I study it. I study it and all, but the problem is I'm not a good man. I've committed every sin there is out there. I try to be a good person. My heart is pure. I try to do for my fellow people. But I sin all the time. And if you look at the God of Old Testament, man, it was like a lot of punishing and a lot of this and that. And if he was punishing those righteous cats back then, what is a sinner like me going to have? But I entered into a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I remember being on my knees and praying for him to send an angel into my life, because my life was a mess, man. I know Miley Cyrus is all hot when she gets on that wrecking ball and swinging all around and crap, but I was the original wrecking ball, because that's what my life was about, till Jesus Christ came to me and said everything's going to be all right. He did the Bob Marley on me. Every little thing going to be all right. And since that day, my stress of that I'm not worthy, I'm not this, I'm not, it's kind of taken away, man. I kind of cut that crap out, and I decided that how I live my life every day is to the betterment of human beings and the people around me. And I'm going to be tolerant. I'm going to be accepting of other people's religion. And behind me, right over there, I'm building my own church inside of a big building, so that I can go in there with my cup of coffee, the thing that, I'm hiding my coffee all the time. And I sit and I look at Jesus on the cross, and I think about the sacrifice that man made for me. Because he could have smiting everybody around him, just picked himself right off the cross and walked on. And do you remember the cats that were hung with him? There was 2 people there. Three were crucified that day. When you count them up on your fingers, 3 were crucified. It doesn't really talk much about what the 2 did, only that they were hung with him. But we do know they were thieves or something along that nature. But the one recognized that Jesus truly was his master. And that's an incredible thing, that he saw Jesus for his salvation. And remember those words, man? Jesus, remember me when you're in your kingdom tonight. And Jesus looked at him, and in the 11th hour, man, I'm talking like winning the lottery at the last minute. Tonight you'll be with me. Wow. I mean, so, I tend to think about my life and how I am, that even though I've done some bad things, that there's redemption for me. You know, I believe in the Islamic faith today. I no longer think of them as a bad people. Are there extremists out there? Yeah, there's some really dirty, nasty people. Muslim people tend to think they're not Muslims. They're doing this or doing that. Maybe because they're corrupting, what the Quran says or this and that. But, as a Christian, I grew up in the Knights Templar stories and I'm putting on the Christian smock and righteousness, man. There were some really good knights there. They were the special forces of the Christian kingdom. But, when they got to the Middle East, some of them lost those vows, man. They became dirty people. And you look at the legend of Richard the Lionheart, and he rolled over there, and a lot of people don't realize when he got to the Middle East, he landed in a little town called Accra, and he became violently sick. He was laid in a tent and was sick, couldn't join the battle. And his troops were kind of mad that, he wasn't with them. And by the time he recovered, he went out to battle, and he was a freaking berserker, man. He was like, he'd have made those Irish and crazy, Germanic people proud. I mean, he went out there and just slew freaking Muslims left and right, man. He was the monster of the day. Nobody could touch him. Captured about 3,000 Muslims, and then when he was going to march on Jerusalem, he did an unforgivable sin back then. He did the old Voldemort and, made his Horcruxes or whatever. He put them all to the sword because he didn't want to maintain, he didn't want to feed them, take care of them. That's incredibly barbaric, man. But legend makes him look like he's a great guy. But he wasn't. That's a horrible sin. If you remember when we did take Jerusalem, we put every Muslim, man, woman, and child to the sword. And I don't know, but I remember as a child reading that the streets ran blood with red. Who does that? Who? Man, you already busted butt. You won the place. Why would you do that? Let him go. Whatever. But so then enters, 100 years, almost 100 years later, 96 years later, whatever, Salahuddin, who I believe was a Kurd, if my memory serves me correct. Salahuddin, who was a brilliant tactician, he came to unite the Muslim tribes, and he retook back Jerusalem. As one of his greatest promises to their people was he would regain the holy city, and he did. And Balin was the last defender of that city, and when he came there, Salahuddin had counsel with him and said, look, we're not those people. The people that were before us, what an intelligent man. We don't have to have the sins of our father cast upon us. We can choose to be a different person. So he allowed those slaves to be bought off and to get freedom if they could be paid for. If not, they had to go into slavery. But at least he didn't put them to the sword. So in closing, listen, religions, do your thing, man. If you're gay, if you're straight, if you're if you're proud, who cares, man? Just be yourself. I put these videos out and I get criticized all the time. But you know what? I'm a middle-aged, older gentleman that's happily married. I have a beautiful wife that came into my life 23 years ago. I have the most wonderful kids in the world. We've been through tragedy. We've been through a million things. And today I have an understanding that in my religion, my best friend, Jesus Christ, is waiting for me in a different place. In some religions, we call it Jannah, heaven, wherever it is. That path to righteousness is won every day by your heart. Do the right thing, and I'll see you in heaven.